Welcome to Cosplayland, I am Alice, and last time I showed you how I made the cloak, the trousers, and the dress for my Marcille cosplay. This time I will be finishing all the accessories to complete my Dungeon Meshi adventure. So let's get started. I love Marcille, and one of her main characteristics is that she can make magic. So I thought we should be making a magic book. I decided to print some runes on these brown cards, and you may be thinking, Alice, why did you use black ink? Don't worry, that's exactly the color ink that you need to make this trick, because I'm going to be covering it in gold foil. I cut a piece of foil as wide as my printer cover, and then I covered the piece with another paper and used my laminator to apply heat evenly. After waiting for a little bit, it didn't work. You see, cosplay is not magic, it's just a game of practice. Just keep trying until you get the results you want. And yes, I had to do many trials with many settings to get this right, but I eventually got it working. Practice makes perfect. Do, however, keep in mind this trick only works if you are using a laser printer, so make sure you read all the specifications of your foil if you want to do it. I decided to use a journal as a base. I can keep writing on it as if it was a real spellbook. With my covers looking gold and shiny, I simply had to fold the edges of the covers inward. It is actually a good idea to use your failed attempts to test it first. It took a couple of trial and errors. With the help of a ruler and scissors, it was very easy to fold the sides. And I also cut the corners so it would be easier to fold them inwards. I glued the front and back pieces together to make it a single piece. With a little bit of glue, I also added some details to the spine of the book. And this is how it looks once it's dry. The spellbook is looking great, but we are going to need some pouches to hold all our trinkets. First, I cut a rectangle of leather and folded the edges inwards. Just to make sure your buckle will fit through it, make a test before you start sewing. I top stitched the edges and attached the buckle. You can also shape the other edges and arrows so it's easier to put it through. And don't forget to make some holes as well. The pouches and the book holder have a similar shape. I traced my pattern into fake leather and cut the pieces. I also cut notches on the fabric to make it easier to assemble them. If you finish the edges before you join the sides, it will be easier. The last thing to sew is the bottom edge. And once you turn it inside out, you will have a lovely pouch. It is, however, looking a little bit wonky. I simply ironed my piece to get all those edges very crisp, but you can also add some cardboard or foam to the inside to make sure it stays in shape. Time to add some decorations and closures. You can use an owl to make some holes and put some decorative pins. I added the snap buttons and a loop at the back. The book holder was the same but with a belt at the front. For the stuff, I decided to use a PVC pipe. And yes, this was going to be for my Bo Peep cosplay, but it never happened, and let's be honest, the last film wasn't as good as the others, so I kind of lost interest on that. 3D printing the stuff would have taken forever, so I decided to go for a more crafty side, and I bought a foam breath. It did indeed arrive broken, but it was only £4, and you know what? I know how to fix it. I first rubbed the broken part with masking tape so it wouldn't move. And then, here is the trick. I used plaster wraps. Genius, I know. I stabbed my breath with the pipe and I moved on to prepare the plaster. Spoiler alert, this is going to get messy. Make sure if you are doing anything like this, cover all your surfaces with cardboard, wear gloves, use an apron, and be ready to clean your floors because there will be plaster everywhere. I cut the plaster into smaller pieces so it will be easier to use. One by one, I wet each piece of plaster and wrapped it around my stuff, leaving no inch untouched. Dr. Frankenstein would have been proud of me. This took some time, but it was definitely quicker than my printer. Make sure to reinforce the joint at the top with a few extra strips. If the surface feels a bit too rough, or you find any imperfections, it is very easy to sand it once it's dry. Finally, a little bit of color theory. I have lots of paints at home, but brown isn't one I have a lot of. So I decided to mix a few colors to make my own. Did you know that if you mix red, yellow and blue, you get brown? And yes, yellow and red make orange, so I decided to make orange, which is a color I don't use at all, to start my mix. I simply kept adding colors until I found the shade I liked. And don't forget that you have to prime your stuff to make sure your paint sticks to it. As I was in a hurry, I simply added my clear primer to the mix. Time to cover the whole thing with chocolate brown. Delicious! In Dungeon. I also added a black wash that I made with a little bit of paint and water. And finally, with a lighter shade of brown, I dry brushed some highlights. If you have never done dry brushing, it is very easy to do. You simply clean the excess paint from the brush, so there's only a little bit of paint left, and when you apply it, you just catch the very edges with the paint, leaving all the places that you painted before darker. A few more extra details here and there, and my stuff was done. It is time to make the backpack. Once again, I use my fake leather to cut the pieces. I also decided to cut lining out of this psychedelic floral fabric, which I thought really matched the theme. The backpack is basically two rectangles sewn at the side, and for the bottom edge I sewed together this oval piece. Just make sure you are matching the notches to make sure the pieces fit together. If you don't want to figure out the exact shape for the backpack or any of the other pieces I've made so far, I will be leaving you a link in the description with the patterns I use. It will definitely save you some time and some maths problems. Once it is sewn, it looks like this.
Did I totally start it on the wrong side? Yes, because that's supposed to go on the side. So, the fun to undo all the leather.
For the leather part, I did exactly the same, but I thought it would be a nice idea to add a thicker leather to the bottom part. I made some more straps and added them to the backpack. I actually should have added them earlier, so I decided to open the seam to get them between the back and the bottom piece. And I also sewed them at the top. For the flap, I sewed the lining and the pleather right sides together. I removed the excess fabric at the curve and turned the flap before I top stitched it again. Now I just needed to attach it to the backpack. But before I finished the top, I decided to add grommets so I could insert cord to further protect my belongings and just to be able to close my backpack properly. I inserted the leather bag into the lining and sew around the top, leaving a gap at the back so I can turn my fabric afterwards. And once they were sewn together, you can turn the pleather and the lining, and you can position your lining inside the backpack. I know it looks a bit mental, but it actually works. How cool does it look? sew the gap that you left at the back to make sure your lining is completely finished. And of course, I chose to hand sew it because that's what I do. Why do it with your sewing machine when you can spend so much longer sewing it by hand, but making it perfect? I did also top stitch the edge to create a channel where I could insert my cord. And for the closure, I sewed 2 belts to the front. They were, however, not strong enough, so I changed into rivets to make sure they would just look better and just withhold any strength that I may apply on it. The buckles at the front are inserted the same way. I also inserted the snap buttons at the top so I could make a loop with the remaining length of the belt to be able to carry a blanket at the top. And with that, the accessories of my Marcille cosplay are finished. This is how it looks all together. I hope you like this video, and don't forget to watch the making of the dress, which is already out in the channel. I will be back with new cosplays very soon, but first I am taking a couple of weeks off to prepare for my next big project. I can't wait to show you. I will be seeing you very soon in the next adventure. Bye!